The content on this channel is for educational and informational purposes only. Nothing we say or do should be considered advice. No tax, legal, accounting, investment, or any other kind of advice. Anything you invest in is at your own risk. Do your own research and consult with professionals.
All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of, I guess, what we'll call Terabytes, because we've got the old crew here, me and Pete, and we're interviewing a guy who must be living large because he, frankly, stole everybody's Bitcoin in the downfall of Terra, LFG. We're trying to figure out where the Bitcoins went. We have Chris Amani from Terraform Labs. Chris, how are you doing, sir?
Doing great. Good to be back on with you guys again. It's been a
Well,
while.
yeah, it has been a while. It has been a while. You were on the run from authorities. You were on the run from the pitchfork and brimstone mob for a while. So we're happy to have you here. And we won't give away your location just in case the mob might form outside your house. But you guys
I
did come out
appreciate
with
that.
this report of an audit rather of what happened with the LFG funds. Obviously, a ton of money changed hands during the depeg of UST, and that's, I think, going to be the focus of what we talk about. But we also want to talk a little bit about what's going to happen with Luna V2 and things that TFL's been working on moving forward. So we're excited to dive into all that. Maybe a good starting point for this conversation would be from your perspective, because we know you, Chris. You're one of us. We're humble podcasters. You know, we're not big money guys. We're not rubbing our hands together thinking about scheming how to steal money from people. You're one of us. So you were kind of maybe in the war room or an insider when all this shit went down. You worked for TFL. You still work for TFL, but when all this stuff went down, you were there on the front lines. Can you kind of give us maybe the play-by-play from your eyes of the depegging event and what really happened during those fateful days back in May of 2022?
Yeah, I'll give you what I remember. It was a wild week, and there are definitely some holes in my memory that sometimes I can pull back into. But yeah, and for those of you that I haven't met before, didn't see my show, I actually started in the Terra ecosystem by meeting Evan and Pete out at TFI Alpha. Went out with them, had a good time. They ended up giving me a show on their channel called Terra Crumbs. Got a little more notoriety through Terra Crumbs, and then ended up working at TFL as head of operations starting back in January, so about 5 months before the DPEG. I had scheduled an executive offsite in Singapore for the week that the DPEG ended up happening. So a lot of our team was either already in Singapore or in transit to Singapore when the DPEG started to happen. And I'll always remember the moment. I got a wake up call at about 2 a.m. from one of the other members of the team saying, "Hey, have you seen what happened?" And I said, "No," because I'm asleep. And we had depegged and we had depegged in the past. He said we depegged. And I thought, okay, we're at 95, we're, at 97. But things are probably under control, but it was much worse than that. I don't remember exactly what the number was at that point, but we were 25% off or 30% off. And it was clear that we were being attacked and it was wartime. So, at that point, I got up. A lot of the people were either still on flights or they had just landed. We were all staying at the same hotel. To say I was in the war room during those first couple of days would be to misstate it. At that point, we really wanted to just kind of like leave the people who were focused on the trading alone to make sure that they had everything so they were focused on actually defending the peg. And so there were a lot of us kind of like, hanging out in the hotel lobby, getting updates as we could, but mostly just like watching what was happening and trying to process it because it happened so quick, as you guys can remember. But yeah, we were in that scenario for a few days. Once it was clear that the DPEG wasn't going to work, we all got together as a team, including Doe, and we sat down and made a plan for what was going to come next. And that's where the idea for Terra 2 came out of. That's where we had the idea for Terra 2, and that's where we started to lay those plans. And once we all got home to execute on those plans. At the time when I was in Singapore, it was obviously like we were holding out hope until the last minute that we were going to be able to restore the peg. One of the things I wasn't involved in, but that's come to light now, is that Doe was trying to raise a round But that when we raised that, when that, leaked that we were trying to raise around, it kind of blew up the deal. And so, once it was finally over and we didn't know, and we knew for a fact that we weren't going to be able to defend it anymore, um, the team was shocked. The team was upset. A lot of thoughts going through your mind. What I would say is I was a little bit naive at that point about what the fallout would be from the DPEG. In my mind, and I think in the mind of a lot of people who were intimately involved in the Terra ecosystem, we always knew that this was the risk, right? That this death spiral, that if this didn't work, this was the likely reason why it wouldn't work. And at that time, I really thought that the rest of the crypto industry would understand that as well. And that was naive, right? Like there was so much to come. And so when I got back and realized that all of the fraud allegations that were going on, all of the, all of the fallout from it was way more intense than anything I would have ever imagined. I thought we would be able to pivot to just kind of trying to save the ecosystem and spin up this new chain, and it didn't play out like that. So, the first week was definitely devastating. It was the second week when I got back home and was with my family and realized that how bad it was going to get for Terra and for TFL, was when it really sank in, and we knew we were in for a long battle back, if we could even pull off a battle back.
Yeah, I think a couple points I want to make off of that, and some questions to follow up there. What was the protocol, I guess, for you and for other TFL members? I mean, I know it was chaos from what I can recall. But like, talking to the media or tweeting publicly, I mean, this was thus far the biggest blow up in crypto history. Now, obviously, we're living through spectacular times, and we've seen more spectacular blow ups, which is another point I want to hit eventually here with the timing of everything. But what was the, I guess, internal protocol for TFL and employees of TFL that, like, were you able to tweet? I remember you sent out some tweets. I mean, people were very hostile. Was there like a memo or a protocol that went out that kind of like gave you guys guidance on how to treat this, or was it kind of just total chaos?
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning it was chaos, and so I think some of us started to tweet, myself included, but um, that it only took a couple of those to know that wasn't a good idea, because it was just like death threats and the worst you could possibly imagine. At the same time, that's when the allegations started to flow, right? Like, and you see the same thing happening with FTX right now. Our situation is significantly different than FTX, and I would love to talk about why the collapse of an open source protocol is different than fraud at a centralized exchange and money market organization. But at the same time, it's just a big blow up, and people have a lot of questions, and there's a lot of speculation. And so you want to be able to, when all of that's happening, you want to be able to communicate more, but emotions are high. You want to be able to give more information out, but allegations are flying around significantly faster than you have the ability to disprove them. And even within TFL, right? Like, we're reading allegations, and some stuff sounded credible. Like, well, shit. What I mean, like, without doing the work on it, I mean, even if you're working at TFL, you're looking at this and you're like, wait, that doesn't seem right. That that's either really bad or it's not true. But I would like to figure out which one of those it is. And it just takes time. And so all of these questions, no real ability to answer them in a way that was satisfy anyone's timeline. And so even like the most ardent supporters of Terra started to turn on us, because they just, you're getting overwhelmed with negativity, and you're not getting any communication from TFL. And we want to communicate, but we can't, because we don't want to say anything that's potentially not true. And yeah, so it's just really hard to manage a crisis like that in the heat of the moment. And the one thing I would point to is, I mean, this was a significant amount of money that was getting wiped out. I mean, this is the most amount of money that's been wiped out in the shortest amount of time.
Yep.
Um, in anything that we've ever seen, I believe, right? Like someone might be able to fact check me on that, and there will be some example. Not only that, the foundation, this is an open source protocol, which adds a whole nother level of complexity. So if you're talking about like what FTX is going through right now, look, there are people in FTX who know what happened, right? There are people who made journal entries. There are people who transferred money. It adds a whole nother layer of complexity in the Terra situation because so many things are happening on chain with parties that we can't identify. And there's no way for us to figure that out in a short amount of time. And then the third thing is you're doing it from, a foundation that only has, Terraform, I guess it's not a foundation, Terraform Labs, which only has, 70 to 80 people working at it and significant numbers of those people quitting on a daily basis. So, right when you think you've got your legs under you from a communications perspective and your entire legal team walks away with no notice, that just sets you back another 2 or 3 weeks. Because you've got to get you have to ramp up the whole infrastructure to be able to answer questions quickly and to respond accurately again. And so, because of that, one of the largest, one of the largest blow-ups we've ever seen, happening faster than we've ever seen, supported by an organization that's a fraction of the size of what you would see at Lehman Brothers or one of these large banks that blew up. And you combine all of that, plus it all just being open source, and you have a really challenging situation in terms of making sure that people can get answers as quickly as possible and that you can satisfy everyone's curiosity. And you understand, we're sitting there on the inside and we understand why people are angry. We understand that they want answers, and it's just not feasible to get them to them. And it was incredibly frustrating. Much more frustrating for the people who wanted the answers than us on the inside, because we at least had access to some information. But for those of you who were watching it closely and wondering why it seemed that TFL couldn't get its act together and get answers out quick enough, those were the factors at play. That's not to say we couldn't have done better or that we shouldn't have done better. It's just to give you a little bit of a peek behind the scenes on what was happening. At the same time, keep in mind, like all of those same people who were trying to get those answers for you were all wiped out as well, right? So they were, everyone at TFL felt just as wiped out and destroyed. We were stuck in the Astroport pools. We couldn't sell anything when any of this was going on because we were in the room, right? So we wrote it all down to zero with everyone else, and so there's just those emotions that you're trying to work through those and trying to do what's best for the community. So yeah. Hopefully that's not too long-winded of an answer, but that's what it felt like in those first few weeks there.
No, I appreciate that a lot. Getting your insight on kind of how it felt. I think for us, or I guess just for me, I can't really speak for anyone else, but I do definitely appreciate that factor of thinking that, when it happened, it's like, okay, we knew the risk here, but then you start to see all these stories creep in, and you do, to a certain extent, start to like question everything. You start to question, like, am I crazy? Did I get duped here? Am I the fall guy? Should I be trying to help Luna V2? I mean, it took a while to like let the dust settle and let kind of the emotions clear out there. So I very much appreciate that insight. And I think, a lot of people asked me personally, what took Terabyte so long to come out with something, or, why didn't you guys have follow up on this? And I was like, I didn't fucking know what was going on, to be honest. I mean,
Yeah.
like, we saw, but then there were the theories that, there's theories from all over the place. The worst of which I really never bought into, but then you look at, was this some sort of coordinated attack from the highest of the regimes in power, or is this just traders out there that happen to stack up on the right side at the right moment? And so yeah, I mean, I do appreciate that feeling. That's, I don't know, not a lot of people maybe can even relate to. Although I know the Luna insiders, and some of which, we've never heard from again, who were they were avid parts of the community, And some I've reached out to and they haven't even responded to me since the DPEG, that, maybe they bought into some of those theories, or they still think we're fools or whatever. So yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to share that perspective. So
Yeah. And I know
yeah,
some
I
of
don't know,
those
just to be
people.
real for a minute, I guess.
Yeah, and I know some of those people who have left, who are big parts of the community, and they've left, and it's not even that they believe some of these theories, these conspiracy theories. It's just that they're so burnt that they need a break from all of it, and that's completely understandable as well. A lot of people
So
kind of went out there and promoted this to their friends and their families and their communities, and when it blew up, they felt a ton of responsibility, and they're just not ready to come back and try to rebuild yet, and which is completely reasonable.
So you quickly realized that information needed to come out, and that internally you weren't maybe the best equipped, with the legal team walking out and so on, and everything else going on to handle that. So tell us about. I know JS Held is a big like consulting firm with expertise in financial areas, and they specialize in like risky things. They specialize in high impact stuff. And how did you when did you start talking about bringing JSL on, getting this audit report done, and so on? When did that start forming?
Yeah, I mean, we knew we needed to do something, right? So we did our own version of the accounting, if you remember. I don't have all the timelines in front of me. We did our own version of the accounting that came out. You can check the LFG Twitter feed for it, maybe a month after the DPEG, where we said, this is what happened. And here's where the balances are, the balances that are left. But understandably, that's not good enough. That might be a nice to have, but it isn't an official third party accounting of the facts. And so we knew we needed to get this done. And so, we decided to work on it. I think, like a lot of people in the community who, and the purpose of this report, number one, is to help anyone from like a statutory point of view understand what happened with the money, so that they know there were no improprieties. The purpose of the report is also just to help the people who, there's a broad section of our community who understood the risks involved. I would say the vast majority of like the deep community understood the risks involved with UST. We might have not assigned the right probabilities to those risks, but we knew what those risks were. And in fact, even the for TFL and UST. But even the creation of LFG was an acknowledgement of those risks, right? The creation of LFG was an acknowledgement that we needed more diverse collateral to back the stablecoin to make it more resilient. And so not only is it the community, but the cap table for that LFG raise, I think we raised $1 billion. The cap table for that LFG raise, even after we closed it, more people were asking to get in on that raise. It was some of the best and smartest VCs from all over the crypto ecosystem who wanted in. So the vast majority of our ecosystem understood that diversifying collateral would make UST more resilient. And they invested in LFG as part of doing that. And so when the DPEG happened, although I'm sure they weren't thrilled about it, they understood, right? It was attacked. The debt spiral happened. LFG wasn't able to keep it from happening. And the mechanism worked not as intended, but as designed, I guess you would say. It continued to print Luna to backstop UST. But with all the allegations out there, I think people still weren't comfortable coming out and just saying that, right? Because there were so many allegations of like things that were happening at TFL. Did Doe run off with the Bitcoin? Did I run off with the Bitcoin? Where did those LFG funds go? And I think the first step in getting people to kind of to accept that this was all part of the risk that we were taking on is making sure that they know that the money that was in LFG was used as it was meant to be used, and that we did everything we could in defending the peg. And TFL went above and beyond what LFG did, and I think TFL did another 600 million of their own peg defense in addition to the LFG funds. And that there was no embezzlement or any fraud or anything like that that happened that siphoned any of those funds out of LFG to the benefit of people at TFL or any of our partners. And so that was key, right? We needed to prove that out. We needed a reputable firm to do it, not just ourselves. And so this is kind of like a really big moment. Now, I would have loved to have gotten this out a lot sooner, right? Like it's been 6 months, but we wanted to make sure it was done correctly. It's a lot of data, a lot of exchanges, and beyond even just JS Held who did this, we had another accounting firm, I would say a top 10 accounting firm, go through and audit all of their results as well, just to double check it. And so we triangulated this thing across kind of our own accounting of what happened, JS Held's accounting of what's happened, and even a third party has gone in and validated it. And so I think giving this out will ensure that people know that the people who invested in LFG, that we did everything we could to defend the peg up until the point where it was no longer viable. And, the rest of the funds left over after we hit that point are still sitting in that LFG fund and will hopefully eventually be distributed to UST holders.
Now, so eventual distribution, let's move on to that because that's what a lot of people are talking about right now. Back on October 7th or 8th, something like that, LFG said, well, there's ongoing threatened litigation, so we need to postpone, and at least until this audit is out and some of those things are cleared up, we need to postpone our efforts with distributions. Now there's speculation that now that it's out, that can resume. What I know you maybe can't speak as concretely as everyone would like right now, but what direction do you see that taking now? What remains to be investigated? What are maybe some ideas on what that might look like?
Yeah, I can't get too far into the specifics of it, but essentially the situation is those funds are sitting in a Singapore entity that was set up as a, I think they have a couple of different, I'm gonna butcher this. So, if there are any attorneys listening, I'm just going to try to get the broad strokes correct. They're sitting in an entity that's meant to be a nonprofit. And there are a couple of different types of nonprofits in Singapore. And when you have money in one of those legal entities, we were actually trying, we were trying to move as fast as we could. And we had all of the calculations done so that we could just start allocating those funds. But what we ran into was that you can't just give all that money away without going through a process of winding down the entity. And when you wind down the entity, you have to make public that you are winding down this entity, and you have to give time for any potential claims against that entity to arise and be settled. So there's just a process you have to, a bureaucratic process you have to go through before you can distribute funds from one of these nonprofit entities. And that's where we are today. Is going through that process, sorting through any claims against those funds that are out there. And as soon as all claims against those funds have been resolved and the proper amount of time has elapsed from us signaling our intent to wind down that entity, that's when the funds will go out. But unfortunately, it has nothing to do with this audit report. This audit report is just to show that the DPEG happened the way we said it happened, and that the funds are still there. But it doesn't necessarily do anything to clear the way toward a faster distribution of the funds that are left over. That's really in the courts right now.
So ironically, actors out there like armchair attorney Fat Man Terra, who has done nothing but be a godsend to the entire crypto community and our progress. Him pushing for people to file claims and, I don't know, do whatever dumb bullshit they think they can do without any insight to what actually happened or any understanding of what actually happened. And I'm sure he's going to watch this. So Big shout out to you, Fat Man Terra, because I think you're a piece of shit. But we'll move on beyond the ad hominem attacks. People that are filing claims against the funds there is actually counterproductive to what they want to do, which in their what they state publicly is to distribute those funds to UST holders. Is that at a high level kind
Yeah,
of what you're saying?
yeah. I can't say anything specifically about Fat Man Terra, but yeah, if there was someone out there filing claims against LFG, then we would need to resolve those claims before we can proceed with distributing the remaining funds.
Gotcha.
So you don't think that the publication of this audit report by like reputable accounting research entity is progress towards being able to get those claims handled?
Well, so actually, let me add a nuance to that. I'm hopeful, personally, that by showing that these funds were used appropriately, that people out there who feel like they need to lay claim to LFG funds might choose to remove LFG as part of whatever they're up to.
Now that money
could
that
be helpful.
you mentioned a raise. I do just want to clarify one thing for my own curiosity here. You mentioned a raise for LFG, and I don't recall the whole timeline, but was TFL an investor in LFG in addition to what LFG had raised for that sort of defend the peg fund, or was that like where did those funds come from?
I believe TFL like actually just donated a significant amount. Wait, well, let me look at my notes real here.
Yeah, that's the language that I've seen used.
Yeah, I think TFL actually
donated
all of the Terra to LFG so that it could be sold and create this backstop of different collateral types. So that was a full. So it's not so much that TFL invested in LFG. It was that TFL donated the Luna, which was part of the LFG fundraise.
Gotcha. And so I think this is a good segue into kind of the next question I had, which was like I understand from my perspective at least, UST was this attempt to kind of decentralize a stable coin, which is the vehicle in which you can build all these primitives and toys and things on top of DeFi. In a non-centralized way. So, I said many times on the record before the DPEG, it was a hill I was willing to die on because I felt like you had Bitcoin, which is the store of value that's sovereign. It's not controlled by any centralized entity with, fiscal or monetary policy. UST felt like the counterpart to that, or rather, I don't know if counterpart's the right word, but it felt like the next rendition that kind of let us take the next step into DeFi that wasn't controlled by some centralized entity. And so in a perfect world, if given enough time, if you could train in like the time capsule, you would have this set up in a way that, LFG would have reserves on all of the prominent sort of chains and have that collateral, and it would be well diversified enough to kind of defend against whatever happened. That clearly didn't happen. So what was, I guess, as LFG was being built out, in your opinion, and I know you might not have all the answers to this, but in your opinion, like what was the relationship between TFL and LFG if LFG had not yet become like this sort of entity that could operate on its own? It seemed like there's a lot of like, I don't want to say commingling. Again, I'm not a lawyer either, so I'm sure, there the lawyers watching are like, what the fuck are these guys talking about? But it seemed like there was a lot of like, okay, we're gonna defend the peg and you owe us money and blah blah blah. So like, what was
Yep.
LFG and the relationship with TFL in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, it was, the idea with LFG was to create an entity that could defend the peg until like the peg defense could ultimately be moved completely on chain. And the long-term vision for that was that you would be able to um, convert directly into Bitcoin, just like you could with Luna on chain. But the technology wasn't there yet and it wasn't implemented in time. And so, kind of in the heat of the battle, I think, like, as you can see from the report, TFL just started defending the peg with their own money just to try to do its best to keep the peg stable. But yeah, I think it never, we never had the opportunity, or LFG never had the opportunity to like fully automate the mechanism by which peg defense could happen in a more decentralized way.
There's a number of, I mean, the first immediate, like, actually helpful piece of research to come out was within a week, I think, of the collapse, right? It was that Nansen piece on the various addresses, looking at across connecting a few between, Terra activity and Ethereum activity. And everyone had theories, myself included, theories which, may or may not connect to recent events as well. On what happened and who was involved, and like which addresses, which actors were just like opportunistic or maybe just defensive in their best interests, right? And which actors were intentionally trying to like push the dominoes over. And but do you have any like? Has there been any more research done on that? Did TFL pursue any research on that? Do you have anything to point to? I know you probably can't theorize or name names or anything like
Yeah.
that. But what do you think of the current situation there? Do you think that we'll ever get any more clarity on what happened there?
Yeah, I mean, I think eventually we'll know what happened. TFL has not done any work to try to, or any meaningful work to try to figure out like who attacked the peg, if there was an attack, or if it was just coincidental and bad timing. And I think our opinion on, I think if you saw Doe's Coinage interview or spaces he did, it's more out of like personal curiosity and like emotional satisfaction that we want to know, rather than because it matters, I guess.
Right.
It would matter to us if we felt like it was someone internal to TFL who was like leaking strategic information that allowed it to happen. But we were pretty transparent with everything we were doing, right? Like, so
Well,
we were
that's
pretty
the same
transparent with what
thing. That's
LFG was
potentially
doing.
right,
Yeah.
but being transparent is potentially the same thing as leaking information that allowed it to happen.
Yeah, no. I mean, in hindsight, you could argue that like some of our transparency was used against us, right? Especially as it related to the curve pools. But we were trying to do things, going back to what I was saying before, right? Like LFG wasn't fully decentralized yet. And so we were trying to be transparent as possible about what was happening in light of that. But long story short, going back to like, do we know who did it or what happened? We don't. I can't imagine with everything with the velocity of news flow that we're seeing over the last few weeks that we won't learn something soon. It's just so many different people's books are going to be reviewed based on the collapse of FTX. So many dots are going to have to be connected. And I'm not implying that FTX had anything to do with it. It's just like the amount of investigations that are going to happen in our industry over the next 6 to 9 months to years, potentially. I think eventually we will know. But I think it's still the stance of Doe and the stance of myself and the stance of TFL that it doesn't matter, that if it could be attacked, it would be attacked. And if it was going to live up to if it was going to live up to what we wanted it to be, which was $100 trillion decentralized currency, it needed to survive a test much harder than the one that took it down. So
Right.
we just haven't spent a lot of time on it because of that.
Right. There's a pretty solid argument that, you know, if there were attackers involved, then like, and they hadn't struck at this time, then eventually someone bigger would have, you know, taken the same path and tried to execute on the same opportunity later.
Yeah, if a you know a hedge fund in our little small world of crypto could do it, then a nation state would probably be able to do it pretty easily as well. So you know, you can go back and second guess a lot of decisions. If we had grown slower and backed with more collateral sooner, if we had done a lot of things differently, would there be a chance? I don't know. I think I've settled myself on the idea that it was a worthy experiment. I wish if it had to fail, I wish it had failed sooner.
Right.
So less people were impacted. But
Yeah.
you know,
Phil-
you know, Terra's moving on to something else. You know, we're no longer focused on decentralized money. We'll consider that a fail. And I
that
think
goes
Doe
back-
had a really great post today about his thoughts on it. And I would just echo his because he's put a lot more thought into it than I have.
That goes back to a couple things that I said earlier. Is one, like I kept saying, this is a hill that I'm willing to die on. I'm happy to make an investment in this project or this experiment. I mean, we you know, maybe we could have been as influencers or whatever a little bit more cautious to have used those words during the height of whatever the Luna was. But I did say that. I mean, it's on record on Twitter Spaces, maybe even on this channel. I said I'm happy to die on this hill because it's something that I think needs to be done, and if it's going to fail, then it's a good hill to die on. At least we went out with our boots on, and then
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, so and then additionally, that there was something else I wanted to say, but then you interrupted me, and now I can't remember what it is. So
well,
let me.
I mean, Doe has, excuse me, Doe has a few times said, you know, he still believes, and I think we all think this, that a decentralized economy needs decentralized money, right? But that UST in its form that it was in just wasn't up to the task, wasn't sufficient for the task.
I do have a question totally out of left field, pun intended. Chris, do you have any insight into what's going to happen with the Nationals partnership?
I don't. I'm shocked. I'm shocked that those billboards were still up.
Well, but wasn't it a 4 or 5 year deal?
It was, but there's got to be some kind of like clause or I mean, I would love to resurrect Terra and still have a different version of those up. But honestly, with everything going on, I have not spent even 5 minutes. Yeah, incredible shirt. That'll be a souvenir. I have not even.
Yeah, I'm keeping it. I'm not wearing it, but I'm keeping it.
Yeah.
It'll be just like wearing an FTX shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. You know, the person to ask, we created, that was actually like a Guernsey trust, and that entire contract was being managed by independently of TFL. So I should probably follow up with them and figure out what's going on. Baseball season's over. And you know, that's another group of people where you feel for them because they went really, you know, the team over at the Nationals, they were great to us. They supported us, and I'm sure that when this thing went down, it blew back on them and in ways that we don't know. And so I hope those guys are doing well. I probably should check in.
Yeah. So you were telling us about how, you know, Terraform Labs, the Luna ecosystem, it's not working right now on decentralized money, right? Maybe that's something someone should try again and again in the future in other ways, right? But but you're still still doing things. There was in fact some compensation for people affected by this, a number of different kinds of people affected by this with the Luna V2 drop. which is some of it invested, immediately. Some of it was liquid. And so there was a little bit of compensation for people, if you want to put it that way. Besides the LFG compensation that, as you've mentioned, is planned, is in process, is kind of held up by these claims. But Terraform Labs is continuing to work and continuing to push things forward that aren't related to decentralized money or UST or anything like that, or Anchor Protocol, but are more like interesting technology tools for Cosmos chains, for Cosmos app chains, for developers who want to bring app chains and blockchain apps to life and so on more easily, in a more secure, more economically, balanced manner. And I don't know exactly how much of what we know is public, so I'm going to send it over to you.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit about a couple of the projects that are ongoing right now, and what they'll help? How? Blah, blah, blah. Sorry, getting tongue tied. Can you tell us a little bit more about the projects going on now, how they'll help developers and ecosystems in general?
Yeah. So I think, we have pivoted. It took us a little while, right? Like it's been 6 months. We've tried a lot of things internally. But ultimately, I think where Doe came down was that on a couple of different theses, right? That number one, there are going to be a ton of blockchains. Um, and that's because the demand for block space is going to continue to proliferate. And his thought was, what can we build that's going to be super productive for those use cases? It was never Terra's intent to like come back out to market with another like, DeFi 2.0 speculative set of products. That didn't work, right? So what we want to do now is focus on things that are super productive, and can we bring real use cases to crypto versus, just, kind of degen DeFi stuff that we've seen in the last round. And so we circled a lot of ideas, and I think he really nailed what he wants to do and what the future of Terra is going to be going forward, most recently with the Agora post that he put out. And he just identified a few things that he thinks are challenges to spinning up new blockchains, and how he thinks Luna is well positioned to address those challenges. And so one of them is, it's just hard, right, in the Cosmos ecosystem to build a new blockchain. The tooling isn't there. You have to go try to get your blockchain added to the single wallet in the Cosmos ecosystem, that's cross-chain. There are a lot of tools you need to make it successful. You need security. You need to make sure that you have plenty of security to secure your chain and make it economically viable. And what he realized was that Terra was uniquely positioned to solve a lot of those problems. So what we're looking at now is essentially 3 products. One of them I'll start with is Feather, which, the idea behind Feather is that it's, launching a blockchain is as light as a feather. So what it does is it gives everyone in the ecosystem the ability to launch their own chain, through Terra, and immediately get access to all of the same tools that Terra built, that made it, as successful as it was, whether that's, Pete, you'll know better than me, some of like the RPC stuff, the infrastructure stuff, Mantle Mint, all of those things on the back end that help the infrastructure that helps the blockchain run. You get access to Terra's validator set, and they can validate for your chain. You get access, you're immediately added to, the block explorer, and you'll immediately be added to Terra Station. So we're making Terra Station, cross-chain. And so that's the most downloaded station in the Cosmos that's the most downloaded wallet in the Cosmos ecosystem. So being able to launch fully integrated with Station right out of the gate is a nice win. So it's about taking someone who, it's about making it as easy to launch a, blockchain as it is to launch a protocol currently on a Cosmos chain. And then the second aspect of it that he laid out was alliance. And alliance is a way to form economic alliances between these chains. So if you're launching a new chain, you have a token, but it doesn't have a lot of liquidity. It might not have a lot of value yet. It might not be the best asset for securing your chain. And so what you can do is you can set up your chain to also invite in liquid staking derivatives of other chains, tokens, and their staking yields to help you secure your own chain. And with that, you're likely to attract over users of those other chains, so that they can come over to your nation and operate on your chain as well and participate in your governance. So it's an ability to kind of bootstrap security from like an economic viability perspective, in that you can use tokens, you can secure a chain with tokens that are that have more liquidity, that have more lending, and in many cases have more stable and lucrative staking yields. So yeah, that's kind of it. We're going to try to make it like the easiest way to launch a blockchain, and there will continue to be more tools that you get access to. There will be all kinds of benefits to that. And like I said, Terra's kind of uniquely positioned to do that because we had all of these tools already. We've used them for ourselves. They've been battle tested, and now we can open them up to anyone else who wants to launch a chain using Feather.
So if I'm coming in to use Feather, I mean, this is for those of you who have never launched a blockchain, which I guarantee is most people listening to this, right? You have to do a number of things, and Feather streamlines all of them down to the very like infrastructure for communicating with that blockchain, right? What you said was RPCs and mantlement stuff. So like the infrastructure required for front end applications to communicate with that blockchain. And then down to alliances, which is very interesting. And you mentioned security, but Doe has recently kind of pushed back against the some people just assumed this was kind of a counterplay to interchain security or Sony's mesh security or something like that, whereas that wasn't really the intention. But this was a alliance as kind of a way to try to fight back against the withering that chains experience, where if you launch a Cosmos chain, you're giving incentives and rewards in your token, and if it's not like perfectly balanced, then the token price just dumps and withers, and the security and everything along with it. So the idea that these chains can form alliances so that rewards, you're getting rewards in other assets, and other chains are getting rewards in your chain assets, and so on. Oversimplification, but it's an interesting idea. And I think it's more for, or Doe said it's more for like economic bootstrapping, I guess, and economic survivability. It's more that than like an opposed play, something trying to replace the mesh or interchain security ideas that we've been seeing going around. So this is like a complete blockchain package where you can launch a chain, launch the infrastructure required, have wallet support, which is very interesting, right? Not need to deal with like add custom networks or pay for custom integrations, stuff like that. And also have, potentially, if you work with some other chains, have this like economic bootstrapping as well, which is this crazy toolkit. Before Cosmos SDK was great, and it provided all these tools to launch blockchains, but you still had to put all those other pieces together yourselves otherwise, right? So this is a really, I think, a really exciting project that will make it feasible for app chains to be launched in a way that isn't like super demanding and requires you to hire your own blockchain and economics team and everything, and infrastructure teams and everything in order to make it happen, right? And then pay 6 figures to Kepler or whatever. So I think it's a really exciting project, and I hope that it will be something that a lot of other people will be excited about. And I was going somewhere with that, but I just got too excited about Feather and everything involved. Here's a question. Here's a question.
Plug.
Yeah.
You were about to make
no, I was not going to make a shameless plug for Obi, which is our product. I was not going to do that. I might do that at some point. Actually wanted to ask if you know about like customizability and what kind of options I have as a Feather deployer. Cosmos SDK is very modular. I can plug in different modules and set different options. I can maybe add some custom modules in or like build my own modules, which Terra did, right? So I have all these options already. Does Feather let me select from those? Obviously, we have to have like interchain and some other modules on, or the whole system wouldn't work, right? But does Feather let me customize on that end? And what other options are there for customizability and flexibility for people using it?
That's a good question, but potentially a different show. We should get someone more technical on
Okay.
to drill into this at like the next level of detail, because my understanding of it, I'm not an engineer, but we definitely have people we could bring on and have that conversation, like to get into the weeds of this thing for the developers.
Just let it be known that we're excited for Station to go cross chain, and in fact, we think the incentives of Obi and Station align, and we might be working on something behind the scenes to make it so that users have an easier time, don't need to deal with seed phrases, easier to recover their assets. I'm not going to shill hardcore on a product that we might potentially be integrating into this, but anyway.
Yeah, you don't, and you don't have to
just
show. I'll show it a little bit. If you haven't seen the episode on Obi, we've got to get. I mean, crypto in general has to get our wallet act together. Just the other day, I was trying to. I couldn't find my ledger. I was trying to find like different pieces of my seed phrase, which include having to
Think
drive
about how
to
much
different
OPSEC
places.
you just gave up right now by saying you couldn't find your ledger. Now, if someone wants to rob you, they know, hey, I need to find Chris's ledger. If you use Obi, that's not the case. There's multiple keys
Exactly.
that they need to. So it's security by, what do you call it?
diversity.
Diversity. Security by diversity. Chris,
No,
I
exactly.
think
So we definitely want to collaborate with you on that for sure. We've talked about that inside TFL whenever Obi's ready. So
we're ready. We're ready. It's going down. It's
okay,
already going down. It's already happening. It's already a
okay,
thing.
cool, excellent.
All right, I want to ask you one more question. I think we're at time because we're getting
Sure.
close to an hour here. This has been a fantastic interview, so we appreciate you coming on and giving us your insights on everything, including the audit report and just at a human level, kind of how you felt about the whole DPEG event and blah blah blah. One more question from me, and if Pete has another one, I guess we'll let him ask it. How do you feel about the Luna Classic community and the potential of some collaboration? I mean, at first it was like, by the wayside, sort of like this thing left in the dust, but there's a lot of users there, and I think there is a lot of retail potential there, and so I'm just curious, what is even just TFL at a high level? What is the posture on how to address Luna Classic and all the new retail users that have been using Station, been familiar with Luna transactions and blockchain? Is there a way forward there?
Yeah, I don't know. So first of all, let me say I don't speak for Terra at all, and I don't think that or Terraform Labs at all, and I don't think that Terraform Labs even has a position on this. Like, this isn't something we spend a lot of time thinking about, but I would say it's impressive that they've been able to build that community. I think Doe said the other day it's not something he would have expected, and I agree with him. So yeah, I think like if they're able to organize themselves and build something useful, I don't see any reason why we cannot work together and align um, to do something. So yeah, I mean, it's great that they've been able to get as far as they have. I'm not in the weeds. I sometimes join the spaces and I hear of these different factions and some of the drama going on. I have very little knowledge of it, but I think it's great that they're trying to revive it, and would be more than happy to collaborate with them if it makes sense.
Pete, do you have any closing questions or remarks?
No, I think I'm going to save them for a potential technical bit later about Feather. Just really excited that now and apps don't need to we've got this vision of app chains where apps can have their own chains, but there's been so many obstacles, and I see that as knocking down a bunch of them. So I hope that is, best of luck, and I can't wait to pick someone's brain over that.
Chris, closing
Excellent.
remarks from you, sir.
No, thanks for having me on. It's good to be back chatting with you guys again. It all started here with the two of you at a hotel bar in New York that I just randomly
like a
showed up
song.
to.
Sounds like a song there.
So I'm glad. Excuse me. I'm glad to be able to get on here and talk about everything, but especially talk to you guys about it. And like, let's continue the conversation. Let's get more people from TFL in here who can help clarify what we're working on and for different audiences. And thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for watching. Like, rate, subscribe, share, blah, 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 all those things. Chris, thanks for joining. Peace out.